I want to begin by telling you something that happened 4 days ago on March the 21st, 2026, because I think it is one of the most revealing things that has occurred in the entire course of this war, and because I think it illustrates with a precision and a clarity that no amount of analysis could achieve on its own exactly what this conflict is really about, exactly who is conducting it and why, and exactly what they fear. An organization that calls itself Terror Alarm, a shadowy pro-Zionist pressure group with ties to the Israeli security ecosystem, posted a message on X, formerly known as Twitter, in which it announced that it was crowdfunding a $1 million bounty for my capture. Not my killing, though the distinction may be largely theatrical. My capture, alive. And X, Elon Musk's platform, the platform that presents itself to the world as the last great sanctuary of free speech, the digital public square where all voices are welcome and no idea is too dangerous to express, not only refused to remove the post when hundreds of users reported it, it ran the post as a paid promotion, a paid partnership. Elon Musk's company took money to amplify a $1 million bounty on the head of an Iranian academic sitting in Tehran, speaking to Western audiences in their own language, telling them the truth about a war their governments launched against my country in the middle of diplomatic negotiations. And then, and this is the part I want you to pay very close attention to, the Western media said almost nothing. A search of the major American news databases, the New York Times, CNN, Fox News, The Washington Post, CBS News, turned up, according to Mint Press News, 0 relevant results. 0. A coordinated public incitement to kidnap a professor was promoted as paid content on one of the world's largest social media platforms during an active military conflict, and the Western press treated it as though it had not happened. Now compare this to what would happen if the situation were reversed. Jeremy Scahill, one of the most respected investigative journalists in the United States, wrote on X that if a pro-Palestinian or pro-Iranian group had posted something equivalent about an Israeli or American academic, criminal charges would have been filed. Glenn Greenwald made precisely the same point. He said, try to do one of these about an Israeli or American professor tied to the war and see how long it takes before your post or even your account is banned. Both of them are correct, and both of them, I think, already know the answer to the question they are posing. The asymmetry is not an accident. The asymmetry is the policy. It is the architecture. It is what the rules-based international order looks like when you examine it at the level of individual human beings rather than at the level of geopolitical abstraction. I want to say something about why this happened to me specifically, because I think it matters, and I think it tells you something about the nature of the information war that is being conducted alongside the military war against Iran. I am a professor of English literature and Orientalism at the University of Tehran. I have spent my career studying the ways in which the Western world represents the East to itself, the ways in which Western narratives construct non-Western peoples as objects of analysis rather than subjects of their own history. I speak English fluently. I understand Western media conventions, Western rhetorical structures, Western journalistic habits. And I have spent years appearing on platforms like the BBC, like CNN, like Al Jazeera English, in front of Western audiences, in their language, dismantling the stories they are being told about Iran, about Palestine, about the Middle East, in real time, with their own sources, with their own data, with their own documented record. That is what I do. That is why there is a bounty on my head, not because I am a military threat, not because I am a weapons scientist, not because I have anything to do with Iran's defense infrastructure, but because I can speak to Western audiences in a language they understand and tell them things that the Western propaganda machine has decided they should not hear. A $1 million crowdfunded bounty is not a response to a military threat. It is a response to an information threat. It is the genocidal regime and its allies in the Western security ecosystem telling the world that effective communication of the truth is, in their framework, an act of war. That telling a Western audience that 168 schoolgirls were killed in Minab on the first morning of this war is something that must be silenced. that explaining calmly and with documented evidence that the IAEA found no nuclear weapons program in Iran is something that cannot be permitted to reach Western ears unchallenged. That is what they are crowdfunding against. And I want to be very direct about this. I am not telling you about this bounty because I'm afraid. I am telling you about it because it is a window into the mind of the people who are conducting this war and the information environment in which it is being prosecuted. Fear is not something I am going to perform for your benefit or for the benefit of those who posted it. I live in Tehran. Bombs have fallen on this city. My colleagues, my neighbors, my fellow citizens have been killed. People I know have been wounded. 12,000 people across this country have been wounded. More than 3,000 have been killed, including over 1,300 confirmed civilians, including 200 children. If you are living through that, a crowd-funded kidnapping campaign on X is not what you lie awake at night thinking about. What you lie awake thinking about is whether the people you love will be alive in the morning. But here's what I do want to say about it, and I want to say it clearly. The fact that X allowed this post, promoted it as paid content, and refused to remove it despite hundreds of reports is not a failure of content moderation. It is a demonstration of whose speech the platform considers protected and whose speech the platform considers dangerous. My posts, my analysis, my documented accounts of what is happening in Iran have been restricted, suppressed, and in some cases removed. A bounty posted on my head by a pro-Zionist security organization was amplified for money. That is not a content policy. That is a political position. And Elon Musk, who has positioned himself as the champion of free speech absolutism, has revealed with perfect clarity that his commitment to free speech is entirely conditional on whether the speech in question serves or challenges the interests of the Epstein class that he is a part of. I used that phrase on Western television, and I want to use it again here because I think it is accurate and because I think the discomfort it causes in certain quarters is itself informative. When I speak about the Epstein class, I am not speaking about a conspiracy theory. I am speaking about a documented, observable, transnational network of financial, political, and media power that has systematically used its influence to shape Western foreign policy in the Middle East in ways that serve the ethno-supremacist project of the Zionist regime while consistently working against the interests of the populations of the countries it targets. This class of people owns major Western media organizations. It funds political campaigns across the Western world. It sits on the boards of technology companies, including the platform that just took money to amplify a bounty on my head. And it has, with the full cooperation of the Western governments, it has purchased, launched a war against my country in the middle of diplomatic negotiations, killed our supreme leader, struck our hospitals and our schools and our playgrounds, and then had the extraordinary audacity to ask the world why Iran will not return to the negotiating table. Now I want to speak about the broader information war, because the bounty on my head is not an isolated incident. It is one data point in a very large pattern, and understanding that pattern is essential to understanding what is actually happening in this conflict. The Western propaganda machine has constructed a narrative about this war that is, in its foundational premises, almost entirely false. And the purpose of that narrative is not to inform Western audiences. The purpose is to manage Western audiences, to ensure that they continue to support, or at least to tolerate, a military campaign that is killing civilians by the thousands, destroying civilian infrastructure on an extraordinary scale, destabilizing the global economy, and was launched by a president who did not seek a declaration of war from his own Congress against a country whose lead mediator had just declared substantial progress toward peace. The narrative requires as its first premise that Iran was the obstacle to diplomacy. We have addressed this. The Omani foreign minister said progress was substantial. Iran's proposals were confirmed as serious by independent arms control analysts. The American negotiator, a real estate developer named Steve Witkoff, did not understand what Iran was offering and gave the president a distorted account. The bombs fell 48 hours after progress was declared. The narrative that Iran refused to negotiate is not a simplification. falsification. It is a fabrication. The narrative requires as its second premise that Iran posed an imminent nuclear threat. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of American National Intelligence, testified before the United States Congress in March of 2025 that Iran was not building a nuclear weapon. The IAEA Director General confirmed on March the 2nd of this year that there was no evidence of a structured program to manufacture nuclear weapons in Iran. These are the American government's own intelligence assessments. These are the findings of the international verification body whose entire function is to make exactly this determination. And still, the Western media repeated day after day that the war was necessary to prevent Iran from building a bomb that America's own intelligence said did not exist. The narrative requires as its third premise that the civilian casualties in Iran are either minimal, disputed, or the product of Iranian misrepresentation. We have addressed this too. By March the 15th, more than 42,000 civilian sites had been damaged across Iran. Over 3,000 people had been killed, including more than 1,000 confirmed civilians. 14 medical centers were struck in the first week alone. 65 schools. The Shajareh Tayyabeh Girls' School in Manab was hit on the first morning of the war, killing 168 children and 14 teachers. A playground in Shiraz was struck on March the 5th, killing 20 people. These are documented, verified facts, and they have received a fraction of the coverage in Western media that any comparable incident involving the other side would receive. The standard for whose civilian deaths count as real is one of the most nakedly dishonest features of Western war coverage, and it has been on full display from the moment the first bomb fell on February the 28th. This is what I have been saying. This is what the bounty is intended to stop me from saying. And this is why the Western media's silence about the bounty is not surprising, but is itself part of the same pattern. The corporate Western media does not cover the bounty on my head because covering it would require acknowledging that there is a concerted, organized, well-funded campaign to silence voices that are accurately representing what is happening in Iran to Western audiences. Covering it would require acknowledging that Elon Musk's platform is a participant in that campaign. Covering it would require acknowledging that the information environment in which Western audiences are forming their opinions about this war is not a free marketplace of ideas, but a managed, curated space in which certain facts are amplified and others are suppressed, and in which the people who try to introduce the suppressed facts can be targeted with a $1 million kidnapping bounty that the platform then promotes as paid content. I want to say something about Trump's behavior since this war began, because I think it too illuminates the nature of what we are dealing with. I noted recently, and others have observed this same pattern, that Trump's statements follow a very specific weekly rhythm. Every Monday, when energy markets open, he signals progress in diplomacy, claims major points of agreement, and announces a pause in strikes. The oil price drops, the markets stabilize. Every Friday, before the markets close, the threats return, the ultimatums return, the promises to obliterate Iranian power plants return. And then the cycle repeats. Iran's foreign ministry has said clearly that there are no negotiations, there are no talks, and yet the American president tells his domestic audience that talks are ongoing and going very well, while simultaneously claiming that Iran is on the verge of total military defeat. This is not strategy, this is theater. This is a man who launched a war without a plan against a country he fundamentally did not understand on the basis of intelligence provided by the Zionist regime and analyses offered by a real estate developer, and who is now caught in a confrontation that has closed the Strait of Hormuz, sent global oil prices to levels not seen since the combined crises of 1973 and 1979, killed American soldiers, and produced no outcome that could be described to the American public as a victory. And his response to this situation is to oscillate between claiming he is winding down the war and threatening to obliterate Iranian infrastructure within 48 hours, on a weekly cycle timed to oil market opening hours. The Islamic Republic of Iran has not collapsed. The axis of resistance continues to operate. The Strait of Hormuz remains under Iranian strategic influence. Iran has struck targets in 9 countries, hit American bases, damaged Israeli infrastructure, and demonstrated to the world that the Islamic Republic is not a country that breaks under bombardment. Our new supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, elected on March the 8th, has the full allegiance of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, of Iran's parliament, of the country's top military and civilian leadership. Trump called him a lightweight. He made the same error about Iran that every American president who has underestimated Iran has eventually made. He looked at a country that does not organize itself according to American norms and concluded that it was weak. It is not weak. It is different. And the difference, after 4 weeks of Operation Epic Fury, has become somewhat more difficult to deny. And I am still here, still speaking, still on Western television, still on this channel, still telling the Western audience the things that a $1 million bounty posted on Elon Musk's platform was designed to make me stop saying. The war has not silenced me. The bounty has not silenced me. The removal of my posts has not silenced me. The death threats that preceded the bounty have not silenced me. Because silence, in this moment, with 168 girls dead in a school in Manab, with 20 people killed at a playground in Shiraz, with 42,000 civilian sites damaged across my country, with 12,000 people wounded, silence would be something far worse than a bounty. Silence would be complicity. And that is something I am not prepared to offer to the Epstein class, to the genocidal regime, to the Western propaganda machine, or to Elon Musk's paid promotion algorithm. The world is watching, the global south is watching, history is recording, and the record will show that while bombs fell on Iranian cities, while schoolgirls were killed, while playgrounds were struck, while hospitals were damaged and doctors were killed while treating the wounded, there were people inside Iran who refused to be silent, who spoke clearly, who named what was happening, who pointed to the evidence and said, "This is what is being done to us, and the world needs to know." That is what I do. That is why there is a bounty on my head, and that is why I will continue doing it.